So maybe we should start.
Yeah, I think.
What do you think?
I think so.
Anyone can join in at a later time and still ask
Yeah.
questions if they missed anything. So is it recording? Yes, I think so.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, well then, hello everyone. Welcome to this seminar, and thank you for being here. Thank you for the organizers in Vilnius. My name is Simone Klinge. I'm a member of the Center for Language Plurilingualism and Didactics at the University of Graz, and I'm involved in several Arqus activities. And today I'm going to talk about what languages a university should offer in terms of local and economic needs, by example of research that we carried out with respect to the University of Graz. And I would like to present how we came about this topic, share some insights on the methodology, and also present our research results. So if you have any questions, you can, I think right now we're not that many participants, you can ask in between, or if not at the end, we'll still have time for some discussion. Right, so what has this topic to do with the Arqus Alliance? The European Universities Initiative was launched with the aim of, quote unquote, bringing together a new generation of creative Europeans able to cooperate across languages, borders, and disciplines to address societal challenges and skills shortages faced in Europe. And in that vein, one of the main objectives of Action Line 4, Multilingual, Multicultural University, is to ensure that students and instructors have the language proficiency and cultural competence they need for their studies and future professional activities. Now, how to accomplish this can be interpreted and carried out in many different ways, and many of the activities of Action Line 4 will be dealing with this or already dealing with this, such as teaching methodology, exchange of language courses, and intercultural courses, certification methods, etc. And at the University of Graz, we decided to take a step back and ask ourselves, what languages are we actually talking about? Language proficiency in what languages? Yeah, obviously these are the languages that the students choose to study and that are offered by the university out of tradition or policy decisions or other reasons. So as a preliminary step, we decided to carry out the following research at the University of Graz and ask the question, what languages should a university offer from a local and economic perspective? Either as a degree program or as a language course. This is a question that belongs in the area of language policy in higher education. Now, many universities have already adopted a language policy, including members of the Arqus Alliance. The University of Graz so far does not have a dedicated language policy, or they're in the process of doing so. Sorry, I'm lost. Yeah, it's usually an aspect of their internationalization process to attract more international students, researchers, to be more competitive. And the main focus of these are usually the use of English as the language of teaching, research, communication, administration and publication, and balancing this use vis-a-vis the national language or the language of the university, the traditional language of the university. And while for language skills and multilingualism are emphasized as being very important in these language policy documents, which ones to actually offer are usually not their central objective. So we based our analysis basically on two main criteria. Let's call them location and economy. And with location, we refer to the languages spoken in the region where the university is located. These are the languages of the migrant communities and languages that have been traditionally spoken on the territory, also referred to as regional minority languages. Some of these have been spoken on the territory for centuries, actually. We also include the languages, just to complete the picture, of the languages of the international students. So with respect to the languages needed for the economy, we take a nationwide approach. Sorry. So why did we choose these two criteria? What do we actually mean by needs? Based on what needs? First of all, we are talking about the needs of the individual university graduate to find a job on the labor market. And second of all, we're talking about the needs of society at large. When it comes to migrant communities, of course, it's important for migrants to know and to learn the language of their new home country in order to participate fully in society. And on the other hand, it's also important to value their heritage language or mother tongue language, and to value their plurilingual and pluricultural identities, which has been seen to be conducive to social cohesion and to full integration. So this is in a way a two-way intercultural approach to integration, in line also with Council of Europe standards. And according to one study that was carried out at the University of Graz, at Graz institutions, to which I'll come later again, there is also a real need for these language skills of the languages of the migrants in the areas of healthcare, for example, social services. So when it comes to traditional languages, the situation is a bit different, because these languages are usually better protected by national law and also international law. For example, two Council of Europe treaties, the European Charter for Regional Minority Languages and the Framework Convention for the Protection of National Minorities. And this in turn comes with certain rights of the speakers to use the language in different areas of public life, and also comes with obligations of the state to enable the use and foster these languages, for example, in the field of education, judicial authorities, public administration, media, social, economic, cultural activities. So all this in turn then generates jobs as well that require the respective language skills. As for the economy, foreign language skills are obviously needed in communication, in international relations, in the international trade, also in the area of tourism. And one can argue now that English would suffice as the lingua franca of international trade, but in order to build better relationships, it has been proven and is definitely a key advantage to know the language and culture of the other. So we can argue that having language skills in the language is important for the location and economy, in a way would also contribute to the overall aim of the Alliance of addressing societal change, challenges and skills shortages, and obviously also of the objectives of Action Line 4 on multilingual and multicultural university. So now let's move on to our research. So the aim was to find out whether the current offer of languages at the University of Graz meets the needs from a local and economic perspective. So first of all, we had a look at the current offer at the University of Graz, what language degree programs there are, what language courses are available, how many university courses are taught through the medium of English or any other language, what the university profile is, if that gives any clues on what languages could be important, And finally, we also carried out a survey among the language-related departments to ask if they had any language needs. So there are 4, not counting German, because we're not interested in German in this in our study. There are 4 philological departments that offer language degree programs on bachelor, master's level, also doctoral programs and teaching programs. English at the Institute of English Studies and Institute of American Studies, French, Italian and Spanish at the Institute of Romance Studies, and Bosnian, Croatian, Serbian, which we will abbreviate as BCS, Slovene and Russian at the the Institute of Slavic Studies. In addition, the Department of Translation Studies offers different programs in altogether 10 languages. And finally, students and staff have the possibility to take semester language learning courses at the Center for Language Plurilingualism and Didactics and other university units that also offer languages. And altogether in total, there are 20 languages offered. And you get ECTS points for these languages, and they're offered at different levels, at the least A level, according to the Common European Framework reference for languages, and in some cases also B and C level. So in addition, approximately 10% of all university courses are taught throughout all disciplines, are taught through the medium of English, and other foreign languages are only the medium of instruction in the language-related departments. As for the university profile, the university-wide strategic focus is on Southeast Europe, which reinforces its long-standing cooperation with the region. We have, for example, the Cross-Faculty Centre for Southeast European Studies and some departments that I just mentioned carry out teaching, research, cooperation relating to this region. So with regard to the survey results, the Department of Translation Studies expressed the wish to extend their offer to an East Asian language, and we will see through our research whether that would be feasible or not. So in total, we have 20 modern languages, excluding German, at the University of Graz. The ones in bold here are the ones that are offered as degree programs. And as you can see, we have Romance languages, Slavic languages, Germanic languages, Hungarian, and 7 non-European languages. Now turning to the languages related to location. If you remember, we had 3 groups. Sorry, switching around on my slides. Yeah, we had 3 groups. We had the international students, we had the traditional minority languages, and we had the languages of the migrants. The first 2 groups it was not so difficult it was not such a challenge to identify what languages these are because of available statistics at the University of Graz concerning the nationality of the students, and also with regard to the traditional minority languages. In most countries, these are relatively well defined and usually recognized and limited in numbers. So this was also the case for Austria. So the big challenge then task was then to create a list of the most widely spoken languages of the migrants. There are an estimated 160 nationalities present in Graz. So you can imagine how many languages are spoken. And there's, of course, no official statistics or comprehensive data on the most widely used languages of migrants. So we have to approximate the situation with the help of indicators and combined it with any sources of information available. So the primary sources we take are official statistics on the population by nationality in the city and the region, statistics on mother tongue classes concerning what languages, population census, any kind of surveys we could get our hands on. And we also looked at the inward and outward migration of the largest migrant groups in order of the past 20 years in order to see how established these minority groups are. So before I continue with our research results for the University of Graz, I should give you some brief information on the location itself so that you can contextualize the information. Graz is the capital of the province of Styria with almost 300,000 inhabitants, and it's the second largest city in Austria. According to estimates, 73,000 inhabitants represent about 160 nationalities. So Graz is an ethnically and linguistically diverse city, which has partly developed historically, among others as a result of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and after World War II by several migration waves caused by political and ethnic conflicts or by active recruitment of labor force. And there was a peak in the 70s with 230,000 workers from Turkey, Yugoslavia, and Spain in Austria. Furthermore, Graz is home to 4 universities and 4 colleges with altogether 52,000 students. And the University of Graz is the largest university with 30,000 students and the second largest in Austria. So, so here we have, first of all, we looked at the population of Graz, the city of Graz by nationality, obviously excluding Austrian citizens. Here they are ranked by the largest groups and obviously, and we compare them then with the numbers from 2015 and also with the largest groups in Styria. And there weren't that many differences over time, nor in geographical scope. And that does not come so surprising because for almost each nationality of the largest groups, half of them live in Graz. So, but this information alone is not enough for us to create a ranking order because we cannot automatically derive the languages spoken by mere reference to the official or national language of the country of origin. First of all, in most countries, more than one language is spoken. Some of these can be quite widespread regionally. Second of all, inhabitants with an Austrian nationality and migrant background that speak another language are not figured here. And third of all, one language may be spoken in several countries and that do not appear here on our top list. So we took this as a basis and then we compared the results with the national census that unfortunately dates back to 2001 that asked about the everyday conversational language. And we took the data for Styria. And although this already dates back 20 years, the majority of languages on both top lists coincide, although in a different order. Finally, yes, we're lucky enough at Graz to have access to a comprehensive research study that was carried out in 2015 by researchers at the University of Graz, and they reviewed the languages used in 61 institutions across 7 sectors in Graz with respect to the language skills of the staff, the written material and signage used, and also the languages, of course, spoken by the customers, clients, and patients. And they were able to gather altogether 40 languages spoken by the staff, 60 were spoken by the clients, patients, and customers, although the latter wasn't gathered systematically or was not registered systematically, and many more used for written signage and material. So we looked at this information. We added the most demanded language. We also added the most demanded languages from the interpretation services. And then for our research, we took the languages that appeared most frequently across the sectors and we're able to add 3 languages to our top list here, which are Chechnyan, Kurdish, and Romani. We were able to attribute them to Chechnyan to Russia, number 10, Kurdish, which is spoken in Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria, and Romani, which is Europe's biggest minority language and is spoken in many countries, for example, Romania, Hungary, and Eastern Europe, Central Europe, Southeast Europe. So after analyzing, combining all this information, we were able to establish the following list in this ranking order of the 15 most widespread and established migrant languages in Graz and Styria, which includes several languages of Central and Eastern Europe, some word languages, and also languages from the Middle East. And here we have an overview of the languages of all 3 researched subgroups. We have 6 recognized minority languages in Austria. Those are the autochthonous languages. Burgenland Croatian, which is a variety that developed in Burgenland in Austria of Croatian. Slovene, Hungarian, Romani, Slovak, and Czech. The languages spoken in Styria are Slovene and Romani. As for the international students, there are 15.3 international students at the University of Graz. And in addition, 19% of the academic staff and 5% of the administrative staff are of non-Austrian origin. And here I did the lazy thing with the international students and just took the derived the languages from the nationality, which we didn't do for the allochthonous languages, which is the mid column and refers to the migrant languages. It's just a fancy name in linguistics for these languages. And I think what's interesting to see on this table is that Bosnian, Croatian, Serbian, Slovene, and Hungarian are widespread among all 3 research areas. And we also have some other overlappings among these columns. So now we're going to move on to economy. After having established our list for location, yes, we're moving on to the most important languages needed for the national economy. And here again, we used a set of indicators and a combination of sources to give us clues as to what these may be. We looked at the languages that are important at present, but also those that may become more important in future. Therefore, we added information available on trade priorities and strategies of the government, and the identification and significance also of the emerging economies. We looked at studies. So as is the case for most highly developed modern national economies, the Austrian economy is dominated by the service sector, which accounts for roughly 70% of gross value added, with particularly high contributions from trade and tourism. The export market is the engine for, we're not there yet. It's the engine of the Austrian economy. As for tourism, Austria has the 3rd highest per capita tourist arrivals in Europe. So this was all before the COVID pandemic, and so is all our data, and the Austrian economy has therefore been hit hard by the pandemic, but this also goes for other countries as well, of course. So this interdependence of the national economy with abroad has, of course, implications on the significance of foreign language skills. Now we come to our fancy page. So 80% of the exported goods go to the European single market, mainly to the neighboring countries. Sorry, this is the only map I could find on the internet. I hope you can spot Austria, and then you can also see the neighboring countries. Outside Europe, the USA and China are the most important trade partners. And not displayed here, but as for the import trade, the numbers are, or the top countries are almost identical with the top countries for export. As for the countries with growth potential, then we should look specifically at the countries of Central and Eastern Europe, and they are figured here as Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland, but also others. These are members of the European Union, and as well those of the Western Balkans. And Austria has a special relationship with this region due to the geographical vicinity and historical ties. Austria is the main investor of most countries of former Yugoslavia, and our research also showed that out of Austria's 10 highest export market shares, 7 of these are Central and Eastern European countries. As for inbound tourism, the top countries of origin, which were based on the number of arrivals and overnight stays, happen also to be almost identical with the top countries for export trade, except that the Netherlands appears as one of the top countries after Germany. So here the USA and China are the 2 non-European, also top tourist on our top tourist list, the 2 non-European countries, and they actually have the greatest potential also in tourism, especially guests from China. The numbers have quintupled in the last 20 years or so. So another important source of information that we used was a study that was published in 2005 by the Institute for Research on Qualification and Training of the Austrian economy. So unfortunately not quite recent, but it was still valuable. There the researchers asked about 2,000 companies in Austria about their needs for staff with foreign language skills. And 86% of the companies responded that they needed such skills. Overwhelmingly for English, 80% said they needed English, but not only. 12% needed English or another language for internal communication purposes, and 78% had business relations with companies in non-German speaking countries. So 1/3 of the companies required from at least part of their staff Italian, 1/4 French, and after that the percentage dropped below 10% per language, which were in the following order: Hungarian, Spanish, Slovenian, Russian, Bosnian, Croatian, Serbian, Czech, Slovak, Turkish, Chinese. The companies were also asked about their likely future needs back in 2005, and they weren't very creative. They came up with the same languages, but they gave more significance to the Slavic languages and also Hungarian. Chinese was the most desirable non-European language in 2005 and also likely in future. The companies were also asked about what language they actually used in communication, which was mostly English. And thereafter, whether German was used or the language of the business partner or a third language depended heavily on the country of the trade partner, and therefore of the combined language skills, obviously, which possibly explains then the order of the most desired foreign language skills. So far we can say that the countries with potential for Austria are the Central and Eastern European countries and China. Can we make any further predictions for languages that will become important? So here, as I already mentioned, we looked at governments. We looked at the government's trade development strategy of 2018, which unfortunately for us does not mention any countries in particular, but rather strongly favors supporting export trade with countries outside Europe, especially Asia and the emerging economies, as they were perceived as having the greatest potential. And indeed, the growth of Austria's total export outside Europe to all other continents has been significantly higher and has been increasing in the past 20 years. So then we looked at the emerging markets, since this was a priority, and we looked at 2 studies on the role of the world's major emerging economies, the so-called BRICS. I'm just looking at the time, okay. The BRICS are Brazil, India, China, Russia, and South Africa. And in a study commissioned by the OECD in 2018, a baseline scenario was projected where there are no political or institutional reforms, that China will contribute more to the world economic growth by 2030 than all OECD countries together, but that after 2030, they will slowly be overtaken by India. So one side effect of this will be that the main economic activity will shift from North America and Europe to Asia, from which the neighboring countries then of China and India will benefit. We also looked at a 2014 study where Austrian businesses were asked about the potential of the BRICS, and they saw most potential in China and in Russia. Although we then looked at the statistics from 2010 to today, which shows actually a decrease of export shares to Russia. But still, for Austria, these are the 2 most important countries. I'm talking a lot. So the most important languages for the economy, apart from English, are the languages of Austria's neighboring countries and Central and Eastern European countries. And due to the closeness and ties, they are likely to remain important in the future. Outside Europe, the most important languages are Chinese and Russian, and languages of other Asian emerging countries. But apart from the big languages, it turned out to be difficult to identify any further languages, at least from the research that we did at the moment. So this is our list where we've attempted to rank the languages according to the top countries for trade and tourism, and the language needs of businesses study that I mentioned, and then also taking due account of economic trends and priorities. So I'll let you have a look at that. And finally, we come to the conclusions of our research results. So we have seen the same languages reappearing in the different research categories, especially the languages of the neighboring countries and Central and Eastern European countries. And when comparing these results with the current language offer at Graz, we saw that there was an overwhelming match of 9 languages that are mutually important for the economy and location. And here the ones in bold again are those that are offered as degree program. And 7 additional languages that are important for the economy are also offered at the University of Graz. And one that is important for the location, which is Persian, which appeared as Dari Farsi in the previous slide. Farsi and Persian is another word for Farsi. So at least from the perspective of our research, the University of Graz is already on the right track, including with its university-wide profile on Southeast Europe. As for the wish of the Department of Translation, if you remember, the wish to extend their offer to a East Asian language, then probably choosing Chinese would be the most feasible. But yeah, of course, our research was just a starting point and the list is not definitive. So having all these language skills at your doorstep in the region, spoken by the international students and also needed by the economy, this should be synergized more and one should make use of this potential. And I would be very curious to know what the situation is at other universities in other countries and whether there are similar synergies. So that was it. Thank you very much for listening. I'll stop sharing my screen and see if you're still there. I can see you finally. Right. So, oh, I see a few chat. I can only see the chats now. I wonder if anyone wants to ask any questions or has any comments or on any of the slides or anything. Are you able to take the floor? Yes, thank you, Anya, for explaining Bosnian, Croatian, Serbian, because BCS is not clear to everyone. Yes, multilingualism is indeed, it's indeed important. And what I found interesting was that even though, according to this one study, English was such an important language for trade and businesses, still, I don't know, 86% of the businesses actually had a need for foreign language skills. And yeah, studies have shown that this is a key advantage when dealing with business partners. And I'm sure you know this also, maybe not in a business connection, but in a private or work connection, that there's a different, the quality or the feeling of the conversation and relationship is different if you speak the language of the other than if you speak in a third language. At least for me, that's my experience. If the results led to extra funding in Graz, you mean for what, Jupp? This research was carried out. I don't think Graz yet knows about our great research results. So I'd also be interesting to know. I would also be interested to know whether the university would decide to offer another language, if that's what you mean, in terms of for the Department of Translation, or whether they would be interested in extending their offer for Chinese or any other language.
Simone,
maybe,
yeah. Yes, hello.
Hi, Diana.
Thank you again for this interesting overview and also showcasing the richness of the languages here in Graz, which is really wonderful. I also heard one of my several languages, which is Farsi.
Oh.
Just happy to hear that. But I was wondering how this research could be used in broader sense in order to promote multilingualism in the Alliance as such. I mean, obviously, of course, we can share the idea of how to go about the research, but what would be next steps for the Alliance? I was wondering myself now, whether you've discussed this in or have already ideas, or is everybody going to map out and then continue? Thanks.
Thanks, Diana, for that question. And well, I wouldn't say our research is really about promoting multilingualism in the sense that the other activities initiate activities such as language courses or other workshops, for example. So this was actually a background research when we joined the Alliance to find out, as I said at the beginning, it was about increasing the language proficiency of the students. And we asked ourselves, well, what languages are actually then important? I mean, it's great if we all speak better Farsi. That would be wonderful. And if more people chose that language, and as it turns out, is an important language for the location. So it's more about language choice than actually promoting multilingualism in that sense. And we also thought that this could maybe play into the language charter that is to be developed under Action Line 4.1, and to promote such a research also at the other university locations, because I do think it's important to actually see how the languages are chosen, the ones that are offered at each of the universities, and what sense it makes, or how useful these are then later on if you need to find a job. So that's why we carried out this research. And of course, I mean, the obvious languages, I guess, are English, French, German, Italian, Spanish, Russian, but there are more, and there's a real need, as I pointed out, for these other languages as well. I mean, for us in Graz, it's probably not that surprising that it's Slovenian and Bosnian, Croatian, Serbian, but maybe for the other universities, they would not have thought so. And this is, or Hungarian, and these are very important languages in the regional context. So I'd be really curious to see what the situation is like at other universities, and whether regionally important languages are offered. So thank you very much for your...
Yeah, I think the regional setting is really important. Yeah, mapping that out. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks.
Thanks very much, Diana. Yes, I'm just reading the comments. You can also just take the floor. Quandresa, what you say is what I just mentioned. And Fernando, would you like to explain your question about the second language? Are you still there? Yes, you're still there.
Yeah, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Hi, Fernando.
Hi.
What did you mean with second language?
Yeah, like, for example, many people use English as a second language, but previous generations also learned other languages as second language. Here in Spain, for example, it was French. But also having worked at the international level for many years, I know also that the preferred language, rather than your mother tongue, sometimes is not the same one. So I was just curious if you analyze that also, like if certain groups have a preference for a use of another language rather than the mother tongue, and which one will be.
We did not do any research per se on this, but we did come across it in the area of economy, as I think I mentioned, and that is that what was important then for our ranking list, for example, what I found surprising was the Netherlands appears on our export market export trade list further below, which wasn't displayed, but then it's one of the most important countries in tourism. But the businesses didn't have any need for Dutch. That language didn't appear. So I asked myself, how can this be? And that is because I assume the language competence of Dutch people in German, English is probably so high that there isn't such a demand. And there was most demand for the countries that speak Romance languages. There was a high demand there. So yes, I did notice that, of course, it's important what second language you speak as well in the country, and that will differ as well, both in language competence levels, as well as the choice of languages. And in that one study from 2005, I think with relation to Hungary, the main language was German for almost all relations, because their language competence was higher in German. But also already then there was a decrease of the use of German in Eastern European countries, because it's no longer offered, well, it is offered in schools still as one important language, but it's taken over by English. So that means that other languages, or the languages of Central and Eastern Europe, are becoming more important, because, well, you could use English, of course, but another thing was with the migrant languages as well. This one study I mentioned, where researchers did this comprehensive survey across 61 institutions in Graz. Some of them, of course, also brought along someone who speaks maybe English or French or Russian, or whatever kind of language they could use with, for example, the staff. Yeah, we did also think about this aspect.
Yeah, it's also maybe a curiosity here, but we were translating one video presenting Arqus to the different languages. And for example, we experienced that the colleagues from Norway, from Bergen, told us that they will prefer to have it in English. And if they will have to be translated, they will rather do to the local language in Bergen rather than to official Norwegian, which we found very interesting indeed. Because they said the community are quite used to speaking English.
Yep, and that just shows, Fernando, that exactly shows that the high level of English competence in Norway as a Scandinavian country. And we actually had the same experience with the survey we were working on under Action Line 4.3 together with the University of Padua, which we did not have to translate into Norwegian. They were very happy to do the whole survey to keep it in English. And Norway, you have Bokmål and Nynorsk. So I don't know which one is spoken in Bergen actually, but maybe that was an argument as well for them. So yeah, that's interesting.
Thank you very much indeed for your answer.
Thank you for your question. Anyone else wants to take the floor?
May I?
Yes,
I have
please.
another question.
Yes, hi.
Hi, everyone. I wanted back again to the topic about migrant languages. As you said before, the University of Graz offers a lot of, like, let's say, unusual languages.
It does.
Of course, for your position, such as Slovenian, Bosnian, Croatian, and and so on. By the way, I'm a student at the University of Padua.
Okay.
I'm studying languages such as German and English. My mother tongue is Albanian, but I grew up in Italy, so I am bilingual. I am fluent in both languages. I wanted to ask you if, I don't know if maybe you have researched this topic or this aspect, but if these migrant languages, because of course we are considered as migrant when we come to another European country for different reasons, might help us as learners to, I don't know, maybe are we facilitated, or is that easier for us that we start with our like mother tongue to try to learn other languages like simultaneously? I have this theory that like polyglots have I don't know, much more facilities instead of people that of course speak only, I don't know, one or two, because they can, like, it's kind of like the brain connection. Okay, I'm not starting this this neurological theory, but have you as well seen this through your research or at your language center, that people who have already like a language background is like facilitated in learning other languages? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question, Quindresa. We didn't focus that much on this question, and I study linguistics myself. I'm bilingual myself, German, English, and I would say I speak neither language 100%, but both on a very high level. I see someone laughing there. And yes, it is proven scientifically that if you're raised bilingual, it's a lot easier to learn another language because you're already used to having different systems, different ways of organizing a language, and so on. So this was not the focus of our research. We looked more at language policy issues, you know, the selection of languages, which languages are more important, rather than how important it is to know several languages. I just mentioned at one point in my presentation that as for why we even chose the migrant languages, and that is that they should be valued and in society, and integration is not a one-way system where you should learn the language of the country and that's it. And one paper I read from the Ministry of Education, who deals with mother tongue education, confirmed that pupils who receive mother tongue classes, so these are language classes for pupils with a migrant background or who have another mother tongue, that this is actually proven to be very beneficial for their development and their inclusion or integration into society. They had a lot more self-confidence, and they had a lot of more self-identification with the school as an institution and so on. So this was all regarded as being very positive. And also some of these languages are then also later needed for other jobs. So there are a lot of benefits definitely to nurturing these languages. And as I see from my own home country, Germany, not all languages are valued in the same way. So we're all happy if someone can speak English or French or Italian, we're all in awe. But if the school kids are speaking Romani and on the playground, or Turkish or Kurdish, they're valued in a very different way. And I think that is wrong. So, you know.
May I add to that? I think also we can very well see right now in the pandemic situation that those countries who respect the language of their migrants, let's say, and communicate the situation and the measures in several languages, that they can tackle also the situation a little bit better in terms of the of the people getting sick, and reaching out to the minorities and the country, well, minorities or people with minority languages. I think at least in Austria this is being very visible right now, and they're coming up with now, oh, we should be informing people in these and these and these languages,
Yes.
which hasn't been the case as, or not in the same extent as in other countries maybe. I mean, there are always better and worse procedures, but I think this is being very obvious right now, exactly what has been said.
Yeah, and there's a real need to support and to use these languages. And as I said as well, it's important to know the national language if you really want to fully participate in society. But then I thought myself, imagine you're 50 years old and you move to China, and then everyone expects you to learn Chinese, and then you have to go to the doctor and you just don't know all the vocabulary. So I think it's quite illusionary to ask everyone to be able to speak the language fully, or even elderly people or people with disabilities. It's a very sensitive topic, which I also know from my experience with traditional minority languages, that when people turn older and they're in elderly homes, then they go back to their minority language that they spoke and that they grew up with as their first language they had when they grew up as children, and it was easier for them and it calmed them if there was staff there that actually spoke their language. So it's very important to have staff with those language skills.
Could I just add very briefly, Simone, from a perspective of translating and interpreting, which is, as some of you know, my own field, that there is a very strong tendency in universities around Europe and around the world only to train translators and interpreters in majority languages. And one of the big issues, so thinking of what Diana has just said about services, public services for the migrant community, it is very important that there should also be professional translators and interpreters available who work with those languages. And that's something that I think your study could also maybe contribute to the translation program. And I know your translation program already has a lot of languages similar to ours in Granada. But I know we in Granada certainly feel that although we work with 10, 11 languages, we are not really addressing the needs of the migrant community in Spain. And I think that's another element. It's also the professionalization in those languages that's important.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dorothy. And it's true that from the survey that we carried out at the university, the Department of Translation Studies asked what East Asian language would be feasible, and I said it from an economic perspective, but another one that would be feasible would be Persian, for example, if we're talking about important languages for the migrants. But then again, you would have to see if it's feasible enough, or if they are bilingual or not. Or how many monolingual speakers there are.
Yeah.
That would definitely require more research. Sorry, Diana.
No, I just wanted to add something to what Dorothy just said, because I know that there are also attempts, at least at our university, to educate sort of community translators. This is a little bit different than a whole degree in translation and and interpretation. I'm sure you know that and have that as well. But this was also an attempt to address these smaller languages, but this was not a whole regular degree as such, so to say, as far as I'm informed. Maybe I'm wrong here, but I had observed these attempts for one. And the other thing that you just mentioned with Farsi or Dari, I guess this is probably due to the migration numbers which came in 2015, and many of them from Afghanistan, which is actually now the current need, which of course can change also due to the upcoming mobilities, let's say.
Mobilities is a very neutral diplomatic way
Yes,
of putting it. But that's one of the reasons why we actually looked at the net migration of the last 20 years. You're right, Diana. But we looked at the inward and outward migration of the last 20 years to actually see how stable those large migrant groups are, which ones have been established and which ones are new because of ethnic, political conflicts, migration waves, refugees coming from Syria or Afghanistan or whatever. But the numbers were quite steady with regard to Afghanistan. Of course, there were peaks then from 2000. Well, I can't say from when onwards, but I think maybe in 2001 already. But like, there were peaks, but there was still a steady inward outward migration. The numbers were quite stable. So yeah. But these are things you would have to factor in for sure if you want to create, especially if you want to create a list of the most widely used languages, because as we heard, there were 160 nationalities, and if you have to kind of create a ranking order or see where would be most feasible, then yeah, you have to do further research, of course.
Thanks.
Right, I need to
go.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Diana. I just realized that it's 4:04 right now, so maybe we could conclude this session if you don't have any more questions. Well, thank you everyone for your comments and the discussion, which I enjoyed very much. And thank you also for listening and showing interest in this session. Thank you very much.